walks away after winning his 100th game as the head coach here at Notre Dame.
The reason I was born with a silver spoon in my mouth, I was born in this country. It isn't what you have, it's what you're taught about the values of life.
We trying to save souls.
So there's a rule in life that said you're either growing or you're dying. And like an old friend once said, we as Americans need to start winning again.
Everyone should ask this question. Am I willing to endure the pain and the suffering and the sacrifice it takes to be a champion?
Greetings and welcome to the Lou Holtz podcast. Those of you who've seen this show before know it doesn't matter you're Republican, Democrat, Independent, regardless your color, white, black, yellow, or any color in between. This is not about politics. It's about the culture of this country. And the culture, whether it be a football team or a business or a country, is critical because it's what the people think, what they value, what they hold as true. And I'm fortunate enough to have a great guest here today, plus a great player and a great person, and that's Chris Zorich. Let me read you his resume. All the physical attributes to be a great defensive lineman. His dominance made him the regular subject of double-team blocked. Was moved to no tackle early in his career. Despite his lack of experience, Zorich became a first-team All-American in his first varsity season. In his first game, he had 1.5 sacks and 10 tackles against Michigan. He finished the year third on the team in tackles as Notre Dame went undefeated and won the national championship. Chris followed his initial season with a consensus All-American year in 1989, and he had 3 double-digit tackles a game. And in his final game of the season, he was a defensive player of the game in the Orange Bowl against Colorado. Drafted by his hometown team, he spent 7 seasons in the NFL with the Chicago Bears and the Washington Redskins. We needed to put people on the field like Chris Zorich. He was just a great player, a great captain, but also a great teammate. Before I bring Chris on, let me give you a little bit of background about him. He came to us as going to be a great linebacker, but it was obvious to me that he could be a better defensive lineman. He wasn't real happy about that, but nevertheless, he never played the game, not in one single game. And we go to the Cotton Bowl. We're playing Texas A&M. We're ahead almost the whole game, but we lost. I go in the locker room after. There was one player crying because we lost. That was Chris Zorich. The next day I had to get on an airplane and fly to the Japan Bowl. And on that 13-hour, 15-hour flight, I came to the conclusion we needed to put people on the field like Chris Zorich. It was then we decided we'd move to a defensive lineman, and it was the best move that we have made for our team. I'm not sure it's best for Chris, but he was just a great player, a great captain, but also a great teammate. So, Chris, welcome to the show. Delighted to have you.
Thank you very, very much, Coach. That story is just absolutely amazing, and I really didn't hear about it until years later. It's really interesting. I mean, obviously, when you made the move, you didn't explain any of that, and I'd never heard that. And I had a buddy about 10 years after I retired from the NFL that he mentioned, Chris, did you see this certain chapter in Coach Holtz's book? And I hadn't read it at the time. I've read all your books since then, but not at the time. And he said, Chris, I didn't know you cried after the Texas A&M loss. I was like, what are you talking about? And he showed me. I actually went out and got the book, and I read it, and Coach, I had tears in my eyes. I mean, the idea that, first of all, it brought back so many memories, but the idea that you took this kid from the south side of Chicago, and I want to say I was undisciplined. I was disciplined, but when I got on the field, it was different. You actually threw me out of several practices, and you actually sat me down one day and explained to me, he's like, Chris, I love your aggression, but I need you during the whole game. And yes, I want you to tackle people and knock guys out, but if you get into fights, you're going to get kicked out of the game, and we need you. And so that really kind of allowed me to understand that this game wasn't all about trying to knock people's heads off. It was being able to do it in an environment that everybody respected.
That is so critical, but having people that care, that one thing really changed our entire football program because we made up our mind. We're going to go with people that you could trust, were committed, and totally cared about the team. That's why we moved Frank Stan from fullback to defensive end. We moved you to defensive line. The list goes on and on, but
Absolutely.
Let me say this. Chris, you're an incredible man who overcame great adversity to eventually end up playing at Notre Dame. Your mother, Zora, was an incredible single mother, raising you on the south side of Chicago. This was dangerous and could have been trouble. Can you share with us what it was like? You had a black father, a white mother. You weren't welcome in either neighborhood. And the first year, you were in a fight every day in practice. That's why I had to sit down and talk with you. But tell me, because you were the most valuable player in the Orange Bowl, which was your last game. Now, I don't know if you remember this, but I'm in the press conference after. That was a game where Rocket ran back the punt and they called it back. It cost us the game. But anyway, I'm in that press conference. You came in, unannounced, came up, hugged me and said, "I love you, Coach," and left. And we figured that was about the exact time your mother passed away. And I remember recruiting you. I said, "Chris, you got to bring your mother to Notre Dame." That was probably the best move that we made. But what was it like being raised in the south side of Chicago in a difficult neighborhood?
Well, it's very funny that you kind of mentioned going into the press conference. And there's an iconic photo of me after that game. I'm in tears. I have my head in my hands. I'm just crying and I'm sobbing. And I'm not crying because we lost. I'm crying because I realized that my 4 years with you and the University of Notre Dame will be over. And that emotion really kind of overcame me. And I felt a duty and responsibility to go up to you and say thank you for everything. Because if not for you taking a chance on this young kid from the south side of Chicago, I'm not sure where my life would have gone. And you mentioned kind of a rough neighborhood. I didn't realize how bad it was until I got out of the neighborhood. Okay, I mean, I grew up in that environment. We were very poor, but the idea of every time I got in that house, there was so much love and so much care. And so I've heard you speak thousands of times, and you talk about how you were spoiled with love and care, and I really was the same way. And I was very wealthy in the sense that I had all the love in the world. You mentioned I had never met my father before. He was black. My mom was white. And I grew up in a lower income black area. So it was very challenging at times. But the idea that every time I went in that house, there was love there. And I'm currently taking a leadership course at University of Chicago. And it's so interesting because the leadership qualities that you taught me on the football field and my mom taught me raising as a single mom are really the most important facets of leadership in corporate America. And literally, you've heard this 1,000 times, trust, love, and commitment. Can I trust you? Are you committed? Do I love you? Do I care for you? And those things I learned, didn't know what they were, but I learned at a very young age with my mom. And then all of a sudden, I come to you for 4 years, and you've implemented this idea of what it really meant. And Coach, I want to tell the story because I don't know, I'm pretty sure I may be the only person, but not sure if it's true or not. But when I was offered the scholarship to attend Notre Dame, the staff offered you to come to my house. And I asked my mom, and she said no. And the reason why was because she was embarrassed of kind of our surroundings. And I'm not sure if you've ever had a commit that have told you, Coach, I want to come, but I don't need for you to come visit our home. I don't know if that's ever happened before.
Well, that's Chris, and that is true. But that's also why I insisted that Zorro, your mother, came and visited with us at Notre Dame, and she would feel comfortable about it. Now, Chris, you shared stories of searching through dumpsters for food to survive. Can you tell me how you overcame all this. But I will say this, the one thing we talk about, the culture of a company, every family starts with love. And that's one thing. If you didn't have a lot of money, but you had love. And you had love, and that cannot be replaced. But tell me about it, what it was like trying to find food.
So it was very challenging at times. We received a check from the Department of Public Aid for I believe it was $220. Our rent was $140. So there was very little for us to survive on. There were times we didn't have electricity in the house, but always toward the end of the month, our food would run out. And so there used to be a supermarket about 4 blocks away from where I used to live, and my mom would put me on the back of her bike. We didn't have a car, and so she would ride her bike to the store after hours. And I remember very vividly, she would pick me up and put me in the dumpster, and I would search for food. And I remember telling this story to a gentleman that was writing a book on leadership. And I told him that as a kid, kind of joking, as a kid growing up, I never knew that apples were round. I always thought they were square because I would get them out of the garbage and my mom would take them home and she would cut off all the moldy parts and she would give me this kind of odd, rectangle, square-shaped apple, and I thought nothing of it. Turns out he liked that story so much. It talked about what leadership meant, and so he entitled his book. The title of the book was "Apples Are Square," and I thought it was so interesting because he talked about kind of a new take on leadership, but it was about survival, it was about sacrifice. And so what I didn't realize was that my mom sacrificed at a young age. My mom sacrificed so much for me to grow up in a positive environment. And so, there was a time that she didn't want me to play football. She only saw one game of mine in high school, and my high school coach and one of my teachers had to drag her to the game. And this is after I accepted the scholarship to Notre Dame, and she watched the whole game through her hands because she couldn't watch me play. Then after the game, she came up to me and was like, "Oh my God, honey, you're really good." And I was like, "Mom, I'm getting a scholarship to Notre Dame. Of course I'm good."
Tell me about the book, The Giving Tree, and what it means to you. I'm not aware of that, but obviously that meant a lot to you. Share it with us.
So, as you know, I had a severe stuttering problem. I had a very bad speech impediment. And my mom would read to me as a kid all the time. And one of her favorite books was The Giving Tree by Shel Silverstein. And it was basically this young kid, and it kind of followed him through his years. And there was a tree that he had in the backyard, and always gave. It gave him apples, and the idea of being able to give of oneself selflessly is so important. And that was the lesson throughout the book, because at first the tree provided shade, and then the young kid got older and said, "I don't have any food." And the tree said, "Well, I can give you my apples." And then as he got older, the tree was saying, "I don't have enough. You can use my trunk to use as a boat to leave this area." So it was just this amazing idea of what giving was.
Amazing. Now,
Coach is going to make the great point. I mean, it's an amazing story about selflessness. And so every time I think about that book, I think about my mom. So thank you.
It's amazing. But, we talk about the culture. You had every reason in the world to go in a different direction, to have all kinds of problems, to turn to drugs, etc. Yet you graduated from Notre Dame. You're a pretty good student. You played in the NFL. I mean, All-American. You're in the Hall of Fame. It goes on. But it shows that if you have somebody that genuinely loves you and cares about you, and you have objectives. Now, what inspired you to eventually want to play football? And when did you come to the idea that you might be a pro football player?
So it's kind of a funny story. You mentioned I went to the same high school as Dick Butkus, who's just an amazing Chicago Bear, NFL Hall of Famer. He has since passed away, unfortunately, but he was just a great player. I went to Chicago Vocational High School just because it was a neighborhood school. I hadn't played Pee Wee football. The coach didn't recruit me. And I was a freshman, and I was about 225, same height, 6'1", and walking through the hallway, and the coach said, "Are you a student here?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Let me see your ID." So I showed him my ID. He said, I want you to come talk to me in the basement. So we had a long conversation about playing football for Chicago Vocational, and I had to get a permission slip signed by my mom. And he gave it to me. I took it home, and she said, "Absolutely not. I don't want my little baby getting hurt." So I didn't play at all my freshman year. And however, I hung around a lot of the guys that were on the team. And I realized that those guys were doing something important. So I would hang out. I mean, after practice, I'd watch the practice, and I'd talk to a couple of guys when I walk home. And it wasn't until the following year when I asked the coach for a permission slip, and he kind of laughed at me and threw it to me because he knew my mom was going to say no. And she said no again. So on the way to school, I actually forged my mom's name on the permission slip. And so I was playing, and she was asking me why I was getting home so late, because of practice. And I just explained to her I was involved in extracurricular activities. So technically it wasn't lying, but, I kind of told like a fib, so to speak. And when she found out, I explained to her that I have a chance to be around positive men. I have a chance to learn about goal setting. So all these were things that I didn't know. My mom busted her ass raising me, but there was no male figure in my home. And so the idea that I had a chance to be around a group of men that cared about each other, that were committed to each other, that were setting goals every week was important for me. And so when I explained that to her, she understood and she allowed me to play. When you guys offered me a scholarship, Coach, honestly, I thought you guys were watching the film of someone else. I wasn't sure if I was the person that you guys wanted because I didn't think I was that great. But, having the chance to come to Notre Dame and learn from you and be involved in Notre Dame and really change my life. I mean, that was the epitome of my football experience.
Well, Chris, though, if you have something you want to achieve and you have people that you love to be around, it's only natural. Now, you were a great teammate and a captain and a great player and a Hall of Fame, and the list goes on and on. What was your most memorable experience at Notre Dame?
Wow. There were some great football memories, but for me, it was those times where we were, by ourselves as a team. One of the most important things that I cherish, I think about this all the time, and actually, Coach, you're going to laugh, but I still have some in a box somewhere in my house. I have all the medallions that I received from Father Reilly that we received at Mass. And I say that because for me that was so special because although I'm not Catholic, we spent Mass together in a small dorm in the church of a small dorm, and it was just us. There was no one else. It was silent. It was quiet. We listened to the gospel. Father really talked to us, and I would look around the room, and I would tell myself, hey, for me, this is the epitome. This is it. I have a chance to be around great men, and I would love to serve in battle with these men. And you just looked around, and everyone was quiet. You just knew that there was something special in there. So, yes, we had some tremendous things that happened on the field. But for me, those memories are being around my brothers, looking around and understanding that, hey, for me, this is it. And unfortunately, when I went on to play in the pros, that wasn't there. It was more of a business. And so for me, I was spoiled because you taught me what winning, leadership, success was about. And when I went to the next level, no one really cared about winning. All they cared was getting a paycheck. And so for me, it was almost like a step down going into the NFL.
Well, when I recruit people, not everybody's Catholic, and you weren't, but I always said this, you don't have to be a Catholic, but you will have to go to Mass before the game and show respect. That's all. Just show respect. You don't have to be involved. And after each Mass, the priest would bless these medals and give a medal to each player, maybe St. George medal, whatever it is. But it became so valuable. My wife even had a bronze and made into a bracelet for her because she
Oh my
felt that
God,
was
that's amazing.
always special. But when in the part of the mass that said, "Share the sign of peace with each other," I've never forgotten that. The players, it would take 20 minutes because every player would hug every player on the team and say,
Right.
"Hey, wait, we got a kickoff here in a little bit," but that you could always tell how ready we were on that. And
Yes, sir.
I remember when your mother passed away, and I mentioned that. How did you handle it after that? Because I know how close you were to mother, and I know how devastating that was to you. And no longer were you involved in the football program, so we couldn't support you as much as we'd like. But how did you handle that?
So it was obviously it was really hard, but I mean the support when and unfortunately during the time, I mean within 4 or 5 days of her passing, um, I mean it was kind of all of a blur. So some things I remember very acutely, some I don't. But I remember walking into the church and the whole football team was there. You were there. Michael Malloy was there, who was our president at the university at the time. And I mean, the emotion at the lowest point of my life, my teammates and you were there. So the idea that a family, it's important that, I mean, this was 34, 35 plus years ago. I'm still getting emotional about it because at the lowest point of my life, you were there and my teammates were there. And it was so important that when I think about it now, how that changed me as a person, because now not only did I share a jersey or did I share a helmet with these guys, like these guys were with me at the darkest, my lowest point in my life, and they were there. And so the idea of what's so special about a team, and coach, you've coached hundreds of teams, and I've been on a lot of teams, but it's the idea of a family that
Well,
I didn't have as a kid growing up. It was just my mom and I, and so having a chance to kind of be part of your family, your real family, and also the football family, just made a huge impression on me. So the idea of what trust, love, and commitment is so important. And even though it's on our national championship ring, there isn't a day that goes by that I don't think about it, and also apply that now to the business community that I work in.
I understand what you're saying, Chris. And, as you heard me say many times, the only friends you have in this world when things don't go well, those you eat with, bleed with, sleep with, pray with, and cry with, that's your family and your teammates. And your teammates, we build a family there. And you talk about the trust, love, and commitment. That was our foundation. That was the thing we believed in, that everybody understood that we're going to do the right thing so people could trust each other. When you went out, you knew that your teammates were going to be there for you. Even at the riot before the Miami game, your teammates stuck together. It goes on. And the fact that you were totally committed to excellence in everything you do. Everybody wants to win when the band's playing, the crowd's cheering, the TV lights are on. The question is, do you win in practice by being the best you can be? But most important of all, you build a love and a caring for one another, and that's more important than anything else in this world. Now, you spent 7 seasons in the NFL. What factors do you think contributed to your success in the NFL?
Well, for me, it was being smaller, being faster, being stronger. I mean, I wasn't your typical nose guard defensive tackle as I got drafted by the Bears. And so I had to find other ways to survive. And so the only thing that I could outdo my opponents was to be faster, be stronger than them. I wasn't going to grow anymore. And so for me, it was about how do I become faster, stronger? And it was great because all the pressure of being in a big environment, playing in thousands of fans, I already had that. So I didn't have to deal with the pressure of being in a big program because I just left one of the biggest programs in the country and won a national championship there. So the idea of it being an environment where it may have been too big for me, that was gone. So now it was just me concentrating on being a great player. And as I mentioned before, my first year I came in, really didn't play a lot, played on special teams. It was our first game, played on special teams, we lost. And I was in the locker kind of not unhappy, wasn't crying this time, but I was unhappy about the loss. And somebody came up to me and said, what's going on? I was like, man, we lost. He's like, man, you didn't even play. Get your clothes on. Let's go to this party. And that just, it struck me as these people care. And so it was so hard to adjust from being in an environment where every game, every inch, every yard, every practice, what's important now, everything mattered. But when I got to the next level, guys just wanted a paycheck. They didn't care about winning and losing. And so when I was cut by the Bears in October of 97, and then picked up the next day by going to law school, and for me, playing football was at Notre Dame and in Chicago. So after the season ended, I retired and went to law school full time at Notre Dame.
Oh, that's amazing. Now, Chris, I know you say you weren't real tall, but here's how I felt about your height. When they said, well, he's not real tall, does his feet reach the ground? If his feet reach the ground, he's tall enough, and that certainly applied to you. Now, you played in a lot of great games in the NFL as well as college. Is there any game that stands out? Would it be the Cotton Bowl, the last game you played? Would it be the Miami game? What would stand out in your mind?
And I have three actually. The first one was the Miami game in '88. There was so much pressure. I mean, there was so much hype around that game. And then after that game, and I'm going to talk a little bit about all three of them, that game I think solidified the fact that we knew we belonged. We thought we knew before the game. We had some great games beforehand, but Miami had won the national championship the year before and also the following year. And so right there in the middle, we have our year, but it was great because everybody counted us out because a lot of the players, and Coach, I don't think you get enough credit for this, having the chance to mold and put together a team that had suffered so much loss with Jerry Faust. And it was a chaotic locker room. You come in town and change the whole philosophy, but then you bring these younger, talented players in. And so it's a mix of the old regime, like an Andy Hack and Frank Stams, but then you have the younger guys like Rocket Ismail, myself, and a couple other guys, and all of a sudden you're able to mold this team together and have success. So I love the Miami game for that because now we made a statement we belong. Before that was the game you mentioned before, my first collegiate game. You don't remember this, but the week before practice, you mentioned that their center was talking a lot of crap about me. Now, I'm not sure if he was or not, but I had probably had the best week of practice, gotten a couple fights, but that game, I felt like I was on just another emotional high. I mean, I was yelling and screaming. I jumped off sides a couple times, and I know that center was like, what the hell is going on? Like, who's this madman in front of me? But I played this a great game, as you mentioned, and was just so fired up, so focused about beating Michigan. And then thirdly, the last game I would like to mention was the last game that I played in, as you mentioned, the Orange Bowl, where we lost. And that was because, yes, I had success there, but it was my last game at Notre Dame. And that emotion, you mentioned, I went in there, talked to you. What you may not know is I actually went into the Colorado locker room as well and congratulated Coach McCarthy and his team on a great game. And so, not sure I would do that now, but I was just so full of emotion because playing for Notre Dame meant so much to me, and it was over. Like it was going to be that was my final game. And so it was just so hard to articulate. and process at the time that all I can do is put my hand in my hands and just cry and sob.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that we built a love for the university. And there used to be a love for this country and the way we did things. And, you've done an awful lot of things for the youth when you went into professional football. Tell us about some of the things you've done for the younger people, Chris.
So, in honor of my mother who passed away, and it was unfortunate because she passed away in January and I got drafted in April, Coach. And it was just so hard because now I had a chance to kind of give her the things I thought she wanted was, a big house, nice clothes, the idea that she could live in a safe neighborhood. But, honestly, I don't think those things were important to her. It was just raising her son as best as she could in the environment. So I wanted to selfishly give of myself in honor of her. So I started the Christopher Zorich Foundation, and we had scholarships, we had food programs, we had mentor programs. Really, the chance to help people beyond just kind of being able to talk to them. I wanted to kind of do something tangible. And so we had a scholarship at the University of Notre Dame, and we were able to provide, I want to say, over $1 million in scholarships to the university because I wanted to kind of share and show my love for the university, but also our recipients were young people who grew up kind of in the same circumstance as myself, not going to the best school, maybe a challenging environment, and being able to watch and see how they were able to overcome the obstacles they faced in life. The least thing we could do is provide a 4-year scholarship for them. So that's what we did.
Well, you've done a great job. And I know your mother, the thing she wanted most was to be proud of her son, and she certainly did that. Now, Chris, we didn't have an NIL, and you didn't have money. It came from, how is it the athletes today, they need to have money? You don't need to have money if you have right inside of you.
Right. I mean, there were some challenging times, but guess what? We made it through. And it's funny that you mentioned that because people mention, oh, Chris, do you ever think about, how much money you could have received for NIL? And I just simply tell them no. I mean, I had going to Notre Dame, you offering me a scholarship, having a chance to play at Notre Dame, changed my life forever. And I will stand on the tallest tower and yell this, but the idea of what Notre Dame did for me changed my life. And so I don't need a dollar equivalent to make that happen. And so for me, if NIL existed, I'm not sure if I would have made a different decision because Notre Dame and being with you was really in God's plan.
Well, I tell you, you're very kind, Chris. Now, what do you think about all the crime that's going on in cities, etc.?
It's just so frustrating, and the idea of solving the problem, it goes much deeper than more cops or taking the rights away from cops. I mean, it's economic development. It's making sure that communities that are in challenging situations have a chance to succeed. But also, it starts in the home. And we recently saw in the news the parents of a young man who had some mental issues, who unfortunately used a gun to murder people, were now charged. And so it's this idea of being able to provide a stable home and then allow your kids to be productive individuals. And I guess I look at it differently because, we faced every challenge in the world, yet I was spoiled with all the love in the world. And so for me, when I look at circumstances of young people kind of going off the tracks, so to speak, I mean, it's challenging, but it starts in the home. Now, when the home isn't right, then that's a whole different conversation. But Coach, it's something that's extremely important. And I think that if we could all have the philosophy of understanding what it means to be with a group or have someone that you're committed to, have someone that you trust, but more importantly, have someone that loves you. I definitely think the world could be a better place.
Well, it brings me to my last question. We built a culture at Notre Dame on our football team where you players sort of policed it yourself with your players, particularly younger players coming out. What do we need to do to help change the culture of this country? Because, Chris, it's not the same as when you were growing up.
Sure, and I would agree with that, but it's the philosophy that you're taking, really kind of coaching America, right? The idea of being able to provide individuals that have gone through maybe some adversity, maybe some not, but understand this coaching mentality of caring. And it's not about making sure that every person on the team is loved. As you mentioned before, it's about policing that team. And so, yes, you have captains, but we cared about everyone else. And so the messages that you had to the team kind of came through us. And when we would have issues, we would try to handle them first. And so the idea that we need individuals who understand what is important in our society. And again, I'm going to go back and sound like a broken record, but can I trust you? Are you committed? Do I love you? And those are important pillars in our community that should be in the forefront of everyone's mind.
Very, very well said. And I got to say this, the one thing that I will say about you and your teammates, we got rid of all excuses. We never had an excuse. An excuse only comes out of a losing locker room. You don't need an excuse when you win. But you've been a great guest, and you've been a great person, and you've done so much for other people. And I thank you for being on the show, and I'm so proud of you and what you've done, and you flattered me with the type of person you are. Thank you, Chris, and God bless you.
Yes, sir. Coach, I just, obviously want to say thank you. And I know I've told you this a million times, but you changed my life dramatically. I'm not sure what would have happened had I not had a chance to attend Notre Dame. I was being recruited by other schools, but this love that I have for you and your family and for the Notre Dame football team has surpassed almost 35 years. And so I didn't think when I put the helmet on at Notre Dame that I'd be having conversations with the people in the Notre Dame community and yourself for the next 30, 40 years. So, Coach, I want to say thank you very much, and I love you.
I love you. Thank you, Chris.
Yes,
and
sir.
Thank you, folks, for listening.
And he walks away after winning his 100th game as the head coach here at Notre Dame.
The reason I was born with a silver spoon in my mouth, I was born in this country. It isn't what you have, it's what you're taught about the values of life.
We trying to save souls.
So there's a rule in life that you're either growing or you're dying.
And like an old friend once said, we as Americans need to start winning again.
Everyone should ask this question. Am I willing to endure the pain and the suffering and the sacrifice it takes to be a champion?